Today, we are diving into the hidden forces that shape pretty much every decision you make, from what you buy at the store to how you interact with your favorite apps. We're talking about nudge theory, and trust me, once you understand it, you'll start seeing the world in a whole new way.
I mean, have you ever stopped to wonder why it's just so easy to add fries to your order? Or why the default shipping option is almost always the one the company wants you to pick?
Well, it turns out none of this is an accident. These moments are carefully designed experiences, and the science behind why they work so well is absolutely fascinating.
So, let's get right to it. What exactly is a nudge?
Okay, so the concept comes from economists Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein. And nudge theory is all about influencing our choices using these small, subtle changes in our environment. But, and this is the most important part, it's about influencing, not forcing. It never actually takes away your options. It's just a gentle push, hopefully in a better direction.
The absolute easiest way to get this is to think about a supermarket. You've probably heard the phrase, eye level is buy level, right? Well, marketers know that whatever they put right at your eye level on a shelf is way more likely to end up in your cart. Just by changing the placement, they can seriously influence sales. That's a nudge. They're not forcing you to buy the sugary cereal, but they sure are making it easier to grab.
But why are we so, nudgeable? Why do these subtle pushes work so well on us? Well, it all comes down to the fact that our brains have some built-in shortcuts, these little biases. And for UX designers, understanding these quirks in our thinking is kind of like having a superpower. We're going to look at three of the big ones today. First, there's anchoring. That's our tendency to just latch onto the very first piece of info we get. Then there's availability, where we overestimate stuff that's easy to remember. And finally, representativeness, which is all about how we use stereotypes to make judgments. Anchoring is incredibly powerful. Seriously, when we're trying to make a decision, the very first number or fact we see acts like an anchor for our brain. And every other judgment we make after that is made in relation to that anchor, even if the anchor is totally random and makes no sense. Get this. Check out this study on fundraising. Researchers asked one group of people if they would be willing to donate $400. They asked a second group if they'd donate just $5. Now look at what happened to the average donation they actually got. You can really see the effect here. The group that was anchored high at $400 ended up donating an average of $143. But the group anchored low at $5 only gave $20 on average. That initial suggestion, just a simple question, totally changed their behavior. So, the big takeaway here is that our decisions are not nearly as rational and logical as we like to think they are. We are super open to suggestion, and that first piece of information can set the stage for everything that follows.
Okay, next up is the availability bias. This one is all about memory. Basically, we judge how likely something is to happen by how easily an example comes to mind. Think about it. Sales of earthquake insurance go through the roof right after an earthquake hits the news. The actual statistical risk hasn't changed at all, but the event is fresh, it's available in our minds, so we feel like it's more likely.
All right, let's try a quick thought experiment. Here's the setup. Linda is single, she's outspoken, and when she was in college, she was really concerned with social justice. So, which of these is more probable? A, Linda is a bank teller, or B, Linda is a bank teller who is also active in the feminist movement. Take a second. What's your gut say?
If you chose B, you're not alone. That's what most people pick. But it's actually statistically impossible. And here's why. The group of feminist bank tellers is a smaller slice inside the bigger group of all bank tellers. It has to be. We pick B because the description of Linda represents our stereotype of an activist. And that right there is the representativeness bias kicking in. So we've covered the theory, right? We see these little flaws in our thinking. Now for the fun part. How are these psychological principles actually used in the real world, especially in the digital products we use every single day? This is where user experience, or UX design, comes in.
UX designers have a whole toolkit of nudges, but they often fall into four main categories. You've got choice architecture, which is all about how you present options. There's defaults, which are basically the power of laziness. There's social proof, which uses our herd mentality. And timely interventions, which is all about hitting us with a nudge at the perfect moment.
Let's just focus on defaults for a second, because they might be the most powerful nudge of all. The classic example is organ donation. In countries where you have to actively check a box to opt in to be a donor, the participation rates are super low. But in countries where you're a donor by default and have to actively opt out, the rates are sky high. That one simple change in the default setting literally saves lives. And you have absolutely seen social proof everywhere online. Those star ratings with thousands of reviews, the little pop-up that says 1,200 people are looking at this hotel right now, highlighting the most popular subscription plan. These are all nudges. They work by telling us, hey, lots of other people are doing this, so maybe you should too. It taps right into our instinct to follow the crowd.
Okay, all of this naturally leads us to a pretty big and pretty important question. If it's this easy for designers to influence our behavior, where do we draw the line between helpful guidance and, well, manipulation?
And it's a really fair question, right? When a website nudges you toward a more expensive plan you don't need, or to share more of your data than you're comfortable with, it can feel pretty deceptive. So what do the guys who came up with the theory have to say about this?
They coined this term, and yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful: libertarian paternalism. But the idea behind it is actually pretty simple. Libertarian, because your freedom to choose is always protected. You can always ignore the nudge. And paternalism, because the designer, or the choice architect, is trying to steer you towards what they believe is a better outcome for you.
And this quote gets to the very heart of their argument. Whether you're doing it on purpose or not, every design has some kind of nudge built in. The order of the questions on a form, where you put the buy button, the color of the text, it all has an influence. There's really no such thing as a perfectly neutral design.
So, from an ethical standpoint, the golden rule is this: a nudge should be transparent, and it should always be easy to go against it. The goal is to make the better choice the easier choice, but never the only choice. It's a gentle guide, not a shove.
Nudges are absolutely everywhere. They're in the layout of the grocery store, the design of a crosswalk, and for sure in the user interface on your phone. Now that you know the secret, you'll start seeing them everywhere you look. So the question is, what nudges will you notice today, and how will that change the way you see the choices you make every single day?